welcome to the Football Hipsters podcast. Remember me? I barely remember me, to be honest, but my name is Kris. I am your host, and once again, it's time for a little bit of football chatter. I will introduce. I don't want to interject. That would be wrong. I'll introduce my guests first of all, and indeed thank them for doing a stunning job in my absence last week. So, good evening, Mr. Ross Bramble and Mr. Josh Dorr. Evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Good evening, Kris. Good to have you back at the helm.
I thank you. I'm sure you haven't missed me, really. In fact, I'm sure all of our listeners are sat there going, oh, really? Is he still doing this? Oh, dear. But yes, it's me you're stuck with. So here we are. Now, we've got lots to get to tonight, and we've got a few little announcements. So let's get the housekeeping out the way first of all. As I say, thank you both for your kind assistance in putting out our show last week. And then I got some really good feedback. So thank you to our listeners, new and existing. Apologies we weren't around in the summer. We planned so many things to do and time just beat us, so we do apologise for letting you guys and girls down, but we're back in force now. This season there will be a bit of a change, in fact quite a lot of a change. As you may be aware, you may or may not be aware, we've lost a body this year, or technically we've lost two bodies. Drew has moved on to pastures new, so Drew has moved on to do his own thing, so he's no longer with the pod, unfortunately. And John is also kind of with us, kind of not with us. John hasn't actually left. He's still very much part of the crew, but he's going to be working behind the scenes a bit because his work schedule is killing his social life. So it's not right, is it, chaps? I mean, social life should always take precedence, but sadly, he doesn't get paid to do pods. None of us do. We do it for the love of it. So unfortunately, John will be fleeting in his appearances this season. So we had a little chat between us, and we've decided moving forwards, we're going to produce one show a week rather than two. And as the intro would suggest, this is no longer the English Breakfast Football Hipsters podcast. This is now just the Football Hipsters podcast. So what we'll basically do is every Sunday evening, there or thereabouts, we will bring you a full review of the weekend's English football in the Premier League and EFL. Maybe a little bit of a dose of Scotland from once in a while as well. And then towards the end of each pod, we will have our usual European roundup, where we'll take you through all the sort of various stories throughout the leagues. However, Serie A, Bundesliga and La Liga have yet to start. So tonight will be very English heavy with a little bit of French. Excited about the new venture, are we, boys? We're looking forward to this. It's a bit of a change, but are we excited by the changes?
Naturally, sir. Naturally.
Good. You're ready for some more Daniel Farke jokes, are you, Josh?
I can't wait. Hopefully everybody else finds them as amusing as I do.
Yes, I did sit there and shake my head in dramatic comedy fashion listening to that last week. So there you go. So what we will say to our lovely listeners is please keep sending your questions in because we will do our very best to cover those. And we have got an email to get to later on from somebody who's written into us. So we will get to that later on. Right. The only other thing to mention is we have a new sponsor this season. A good friend of mine, Kris, who is part of a website called 4 Elements website designers. Basically, they offer branding, website design, marketing, and video production, the 4 main elements of the company. So if you're looking for website assistance, if you're looking for any of those key elements to help support your business, get in touch with Kris and the crew at 4 Elements. You can find them on Twitter. They're very approachable. At 4 Elements DES is where you can find them online, or 4-elements-web-design.co.uk. Please do get in touch with Kris. He's helped us out massively over the summer personally. He's helped me out a lot as well. So do give them a look and listen out for some promotional codes throughout the season. Right. Our thanks to Kris for coming aboard. Now, let's talk some football. So, gentlemen, let's. Where do we start? We started this weekend with the Premier League back in force. Now, where would you like to start, boys and girls? Would you like to start at the back and work our way forwards, or would you like to start with Friday and work our way towards the end of the weekend?
We all know you want to talk about the first goal scorer in the Arsenal game, so let's just crack on with it, Kris.
Okay, fair enough. Yes. Right. Arsenal 4, Leicester City 3. Ross, seeing as you've made that decision, what did you make of it? Because this was not your stereotypical season opener. Although that said, of course, Arsenal were involved in a 4-3 at the start of last season as well. Luckily, this one went the right way. So, what did you make of the performance and more importantly of the defending in this game?
Well, I managed to miss it. I've had a very barren week of football, I have to admit, but I was following along with it on social media, and it's just one of those games that you kind of hope every season kicks off with a game as mental as Arsenal versus Leicester was, and then when it finally comes around, you don't really believe that it's happened. So to have the first goal of the season scored inside 2 minutes by a brand new striker. The celebration, I could almost see you doing it in your armchair yourself, Kris, that celebration. Lacazette with an instant impact. And from then on, the game just kind of exploded. And it was almost like a celebration that the Premier League was back. You know, unfortunately for Leicester, they came out on the wrong end of it. But I think for most neutral fans, they would have looked at that result on a Friday night where they got back in from work or back out from their nights out, wherever they may have been. They would have got back home, turned on the news, turned on their apps, and they would have looked at it and gone, yeah, I'm glad the Premier League's back. It just felt like that kind of game. So as a spectacle, I can only imagine it was absolutely fantastic to see that happening on live on a Friday night. And it was just one of those moments where you kind of just went, yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad this is back in my life now.
Yes, yeah, we missed it. The Confederations Cup just didn't cut it for me this summer, I have to confess. Josh, what did you make of Arsenal? We'll talk Leicester in a second, but what did you make of Arsenal? Obviously, my boy Alexandre Lacazette making his debut, scoring within 2 or 3 minutes of it. A very deft header from a lovely cross in from Granit Xhaka. But the story and the headline maker is probably Olivier Giroud, who once again proving a fantastic super sub, as indeed did Aaron Ramsey on the night. Arsenal losing the game with 12 minutes or so to go, and then coming out with a 4-3 victory. So what did you make of the new boys, Kolasinac and Lacazette, and what do you foresee with Arsenal moving forward, particularly in terms of players getting out? Because it seems like that's the biggest problem they're having at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, both of us, Kris, have got a vested interest in Arsenal Football Club, and seeing pre-season for what Kolasinac can do, the fact that the guy just looks built for the Premier League. He's got the aggression and just that physicality of a person that you know can succeed. I think generally I'd hope to see more solid performances from Arsenal. I don't think they'll be conceding 3 every week. At least I hope they won't be. But Leicester did show that they were very, very clinical in what they did. I think they only had 3 shots on target in the whole game. So the fact that they converted them against a makeshift Arsenal defence, it is a similar question that appears every year. Why does this club always come into the season with normally a makeshift something or other? It's either a midfield, a strike partnership, or in this case the defence. And I think that might be where the main criticism of the game is for Arsenal at the moment, is that personnel that were available. But on the night, I think they got the job done. And little did we know that the number of goals going in this weekend, that defending would probably be the most talked about thing due to the lack of it. There were certainly more results across the Premier League weekend that made us all take that kind of big sigh of relief, just say Premier League football's back, albeit the defending is still on holiday.
Very, very, very much on holiday, I'd have to say as well. It was a bit kamikaze defensively, and I think Arsenal count themselves a little bit fortunate in the end, but it is all about the 3 points, and given the state of play with 12 minutes or so to go, I'm quite happy to take the victory. Just quickly on Leicester, Ross, quite impressive. I know you didn't see the game live, but Craig Shakespeare seems to have got quite a well-drilled unit there. The signings they've made over the summer, albeit not many, but seems to be quite decent business. The likes of Ibora, Iheanacho seems to be a good fit as well. I suppose, is their biggest task now trying to keep or at least sell for very top dollar Riyad Mahrez? Because that has the feeling of one of those that could end up a bit sour if indeed he doesn't move on.
I found it very difficult this window to talk about players that want to move on, but are being kept by their club because there's a very high-profile one going on the South Coast, which I'm quite invested in. And given how ridiculous the transfer window has been this summer, it's difficult to accurately pinpoint what Riyad Mahrez's market value is. If a club came in for £40 million, would I suggest that Leicester take that? Probably. But given that, some quite bang average players have been going for 10, 15 million plus what they're meant to be going for, I can completely understand why Leicester City are looking at it. Like Roma, I know, are interested, but it sounds like Roma are nowhere near the £50 million mark that Leicester think that he's worth in this window. So it's tricky. I'm personally club at the moment, simply because the window is so erratic that I don't think anyone really knows what's happening. And I think a club like Leicester, a lot of clubs really, are looking at this window and are just saying, we have no idea what the rules are anymore, so let's just keep our player until things settle down. And then next year, when we can go into a window a bit more fresh, we can put an actual price tag on him and be in a better bargaining position, It just feels like it's been such a whirlwind summer for transfers that there's been more than one notable player that's been kept behind by his club or is fighting to leave and is not being let go because the window is just so strange. No one really knows what the market value is of a player anymore. So for me personally, I mean, it's difficult to come down on either side. And at the moment, I'm siding with the club on nearly every single one of these issues. And I can't drag myself away from that with Riyad Mahrez. I'm on Leicester's side at the moment.
Yes, yeah, interesting. And I must admit, although we weren't exactly the biggest fans of Craig Shakespeare and how things became how they were last season, I did think he spoke very well on Sky after the game, gave a very frank and honest answer to the questions put forward. Not sure about that little wheelie golf buggy TV thing Sky are using at pitchside there. I'm not sure about that. It brings back horrible memories of Andy Townsend's Tactics truck. Do you remember that? Yeah,
afraid not.
You're lucky. ITV, when Match of the Day was on ITV, it just didn't work for so many reasons. Anyway, I digress. But yes, a good result for Arsenal, and they kicked off the Premier League back in style. Speaking of transfers as well, yes, listeners, we will be doing something, I'm sure, in or around transfer deadline day. I'm going to set Ross a task of keeping in touch with all the EFL transfers. With Josh able to help, I'm sure. And I'll try and keep across the Premier League. So in or around deadline day, I'm sure we will do some sort of who's had a good one, who's had a bad one in terms of windows. So stay tuned for that. Right, let's go on to Saturday's action then. Josh, Liverpool and Watford. Once again, we're going to have to talk transfers briefly first. Felipe Coutinho has expressed a desire to leave. On the same day, in fact, within an hour of the group that owned Liverpool, FSG, I think it is, came out and stated he wouldn't be leaving. He was not for sale at any price. And then, lo and behold, an hour later, Coutinho says he wants to leave. So that was the subplot coming into this game. He didn't play, and neither did Liverpool's defenders. A 3-3 draw at Vicarage Road. What do you make of Liverpool? Because they strengthened in this window. He looks like Mo Salah looks a very tidy acquisition. I think, Ross, you like Andy Robertson, the left back, but they don't really seem to have strengthened in the areas they really needed. Do you agree with that, Josh?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said last week, how much it infuriates me with Liverpool's transfer policy, because every year they go into it saying, right, we need X, Y, and Z, and they come out of it with A, B, and C. They just don't seem to pick the right players. As we've said, that bringing in Mo Salah, that wasn't where they technically needed to go and buy players. Their forward line was absolutely fine. What they need to do is look to build a decent centre-back and defence, have a look at the goalkeeper situation, and I think improve in their midfield as well. But the issue surrounding Felipe Coutinho, I would hope if they do take the sum of money that is being offered, Klopp will be able to add depth to this squad that he's constantly moaning he doesn't have, and hopefully they can progress from there. I did see it was quite nice to see Alexander-Arnold start the game at right back, as opposed to James Milner being shoehorned back into that kind of position. Hopefully we'll see Milner back into midfield, slowly but surely, into that position that really we know he can do. But overall, I think Liverpool did struggle last year against these kind of teams, and hopefully for their fans, they're going to see something a little bit different, where they hope they can actually put away these kind of smaller clubs and continue with beating the big hitters in the league. But from there, I can't see it at the moment, with they're one injury away from disaster.
Yeah, and the rest. I mean, of course, there is still talk, Ross, I'll bring you in here. There's still talk as a certain Virgil van Dijk, who I'm sure we can come on to when we talk Southampton in a bit. But there is still talk that Liverpool, after all of this apology and everything, it beggars belief that they could actually get this player. But I do think they probably will do, if not them, Chelsea. But what do we make of Marco Silva's Watford? You and Joel were big fans of what Marco Silva did in a short time at Hull. Do you think he's found a good home in Watford? Really unlucky with injuries. I think 3 players went off injured in this game. Roberto Pereira, player I really want to see more of this season, he went off injured. They lost a couple more as well. But do you think Watford will look at this and think, yeah, point gained, given the fact they equalised in stoppage time?
Absolutely. It's one of those results that I think a lot of clubs go up against Liverpool and think maybe we can get something because it's just the way they are. They'll score 3, but you'll always know you're going to get more than enough chances to score 3 yourself. As to whether or not Marco Silva's found a home at Watford, I don't think that until the chairman changes, I'm not sure anyone's going to find a home there, because a home is permanent. And what Watford have is this revolving door where even when you achieve something that, given the club's financial power and their position in the league and the strength of their squad and the clubs around them, even if they exceed expectations, given all of those factors, the manager still seems to get the boot. And I thought last year it was warranted with Mazzari. The year before, against Sanchez Flores, I don't think it was. There's more than enough examples in the Championship of them changing managers when they shouldn't have. So I don't think Silva's going to be there long term. I think he's probably one of the stronger candidates for the job that's been there since the owners have taken over. But I can't see him being there any more than perhaps a season or 2. I suspect that he'll be in a position, even if he does, manage to stay next summer, I think he'll be in a position where if another club comes along, his head will be quite quickly turned just because of the history they've got. So I wish Watford all the best, because I want to see Marco Silva do as well as he can, because he's a fantastic manager. They got a lot of unwarranted stick when he first moved here. But I don't think this is a permanent thing. I think maximum 2 years, and then maybe if he's lucky.
Yeah, agreed. Nice to see Stefano Akaka getting on the score sheet again. Big lump that he is. And as we say, some of Liverpool's defending in that game was absolutely abysmal. Sadio Mane has to be, as we said, looked back to his best. A lovely goal from him, interchanging and scoring. And as you say, Salah and Firmino also on the sheet for Liverpool. So, yes, a 3-3 draw. Not really much good to either. Jurgen Klopp cut a very frustrated figure. I'm still not convinced by Mr. Klopp, I must admit. I know it's the popular thing for me to doubt high-level managers. More on those in a minute. But I'm just not convinced that he isn't all rock and roll and not quite tactics. But we shall see.
I'm not convinced in England. I was convinced in Germany. I'm not convinced in England, because I just don't think the style suits. But
different league and different styles. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I can see your point there. And I think at Dortmund as well, you're in a league where you're basically it's your job to finish best of the rest or challenge Bayern Munich, isn't it? Whereas in the Premier League, you are expected to challenge for the title.
I mean, Drew used to tell me all the time, because I kind of have an affinity for Dortmund. They're a club I've always liked, and I really liked them during the Klopp era, because they were just so engaging to watch. But he used to tell me all the time that what Klopp was doing there, while on the field, was getting results, and they were making Champions League finals, and they were challenging for trophies, they're winning the league every now and again, etc. That there was something going on there at the Dortmund that Klopp was either ignoring or that he created but wasn't fixing. And I think we saw that then explode on his final season when they were in the relegation zone up until about Christmas time. So there's something there with Klopp. His style obviously gets results and it's very offensive, but I think it depends on the situation. I mean, if he was somewhere like France, not to denigrate France, because I've quite enjoyed Ligue 1 lately, but I think his style would suit well there. I think in Spain, Spain's a tough one because the style is so different. But Holland, for example, I think his style would do well there. But in the Premier League, where nearly every club is, the Liverpool style of backwards and forwards down the pitch so quickly that no one can keep track of it, and no one really bothers about defending. I think he comes unstuck every now and again, and you see games like Watford, and for me it's proof in the pudding. But at the same time, he's been getting the results, and he's been finishing the Champions League. They're still in and around, and I don't doubt they'll do it again this year. But I think in England it's a style that can reap rewards one week, but the next week it can be a 3-3 away at Watford.
Yeah, I agree, and it has to be looked at as points dropped when you look at what the other big teams have done. Well, all of them near enough, but we'll come on to other teams that affects in a minute. But I think one of the things for sure with Liverpool is that they still need some major surgery. When I looked at that lineup and I saw the likes of what's his face, the left back Spanish lad, Moreno. So yeah, when I saw him in the lineup, and for me as well, Simon Mignolet, still the first choice goalkeeper,
and Dejan Lovren.
And Dejan Lovren, yeah, and I just look at that and I think they haven't really added to that. And in a season where obviously fullbacks have gone for ridiculous money, I just felt Liverpool should have pushed. Surprised to not see Andy Robertson in that game. I must admit, maybe he's not quite fit. We shall see. But that's enough Liverpool, and credit for Watford fighting spirit in that game. I think they scored straight after Liverpool got level, didn't they, in that game, as well as getting a late goal. So. Fair play to them, and well done to Marco Silva. We shall see where that story ends. Let's move on to the Saturday 3:00 games. We're going to keep our powder dry for the biggie in a minute. I just want to kind of lump 3 fixtures into one. Josh, I'm going to give you 2, and then I'm going to give Ross 1 on his own. Everton-Stoke, 1-0 victory for Everton. The script was written, and a certain Wayne Rooney duly obliged with the winning goal. Everton, what are you thinking? Are you convinced that they're on the right track? I've seen a lot of people saying that they could challenge for the top 4. I personally don't believe that. Lots of incomings, still trouble getting people out the door. Ross Barkley, 50 million, not a chance, Ronald. But what do you make of Everton and their project? Do you think they've got enough to score goals? Because they can't just rely on Rooney, surely.
Yes, I think Everton have had a very, very good summer, probably the best in the league overall. Wayne Rooney coming in, obviously can't get all of the goals. They've got Ramirez, the young Spanish striker, I believe, from Malaga as well.
Malaga, yes, Sandro Ramirez.
Yeah, I think a very, very astute signing. But I think with all of the money they've managed to put in, and obviously make sure that there's some experience in that squad, I think they've only really managed to ensure that they finish 7th again, really, with the spending that's happened above them and the teams that already exist there. I can't really see them making a huge push up at the table. Depends on, obviously, the teams that are above them, how they get on in Europe, the likes of Liverpool, probably Spurs, even Arsenal, if they're distracted by Europa League exploits, are there for the taking, but looking at Ronald Koeman's side and on paper, you just look at everyone else and think, well, are they going to be able to be pushing into that top 6? And for me, I think they should be concentrating on cup runs, because I think that's their most realistic chance of a trophy and the best way for Ronald Koeman to bolster his CV.
It's a weird old sort of setup, that, because they've got a lot of money, but they're not in that top tier of being able to attract the top names yet. So they kind of got to get success before they can really go big. Ross, I just want to quickly slide you in on the Ross Barkley situation. Is it kind of Spurs or bust? Because Ross Barkley's in a situation here where he's kind of put all his eggs in one basket of saying that he's not going to sign the contract. Koeman has made it crystal clear that he will not play for Everton again unless he has a change of heart. And to be honest, even then, Koeman strikes me as the sort of manager who would hold a grudge. You'd know better than I would on that one. But is it kind of Spurs or bust? Because from what you said the other day, there hasn't been any interest. I don't know if that's the price tag, or is that the player and maybe a few attitude issues there.
I'm not sure if it's specifically Spurs or bust, but I do think that's the most natural position for him to end up in. I don't see another club in the league where he's going to be immediately a fit somewhere. I think if he goes to somewhere, for example, like Arsenal, Chelsea, or wherever, then he needs time to adapt to that system. I think if you put him into Tottenham, it becomes a very natural fit very quickly. So I think it's the nicest, cleanest, easiest option out, especially given that they have Vincent Janssen, who obviously hasn't lit up the world as they would have liked. I appreciate he's a striker, but Barkley in behind Kane again, it's another dimension. There's still another attacking threat that they could lack, given the fact that Janssen still hasn't really come to fruition. So it seems to make sense, especially considering they haven't actually spent any money yet, Tottenham. It seems like Barkley's just the natural fit. I'm sure there's a club elsewhere in the world that's looked at him, and thought, he could do a job here. If Roma are interested in Riyad Mahrez, I'm not sure why they wouldn't be looking at Ross Barkley. The only reason I think that clubs like Roma don't look at him is because of the ridiculous price tag that's on him. And in this window of all windows, he was already going for about 5-10 million more than most people thought he was going to be worth. In this window, is he going to be double that? Is he going to be 10 times that? Who knows? Who knows in this window what Everton are going to be looking for Ross Barkley. So it's tricky. It's tricky, and it's another one of those high-profile situations again this summer where the club and the player have been stuck in a deadlock. I think this is the only situation where I'm in favour with the player, because it's clearly just not a situation that he can stay in anymore. The manager's already said he wants him out, and the player has already said he's willing to. It's just a matter of finding somewhere to go. And unless Tottenham decide that they're finally going to start their summer, I don't see an immediate position for him elsewhere, but I'm sure one exists somewhere. It just strikes me that it's probably the money that's putting them off.
Yeah, agree. The English premium as well. I think there was talk of 50 million of being the price tag. I have a little theory on this one. I think the dominoes will fall once Gylfi Sigurdsson completes what seems to be an inevitable move to Everton. I think that is what will eventually move Ross Barkley on, because I think once Everton have got him in, they know how much money they need to recoup. And I think that will be the catalyst for him moving on. But I actually don't think that Mr. Barkley will be playing at a top 6 club this season. I think he might be dropping down maybe to one of the mid-range clubs. I could actually see him somewhere like I'm trying to think of the clubs. Someone like a Bournemouth, maybe. I could sort of see that in the Jack Wilshere mould.
Wouldn't stagger me if Ross Barkley is the centre of deadline day, and it turns out that half the league want him on loan because they know he wants out. I could see him ending up somewhere like Stoke City. It's a
West Ham's another good fit.
Well, yeah, West Ham hoard all the biggish name players, so absolutely they probably put in a cheeky loan. But I can see him coming down to the last day and making some phone calls, and then maybe a loan deal being hammered out.
Yeah. Agreed. We haven't sort of got a huge amount of time to go into every club, so I just want a one word answer from you on 2 questions I'm going to ask you both. First of all, Stoke City, relegation dangers or not? Russ?
Yes.
Josh?
Yes.
It's a hat trick from me. And Mark Hughes, out of a job by Christmas, yes or no? Josh?
I think he'll last a little bit longer.
Russ?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I don't see him going before Christmas myself, but I think certainly this season probably his last.
I think by that question, we here at the Hipsters podcast think that Stoke City are potentially one of the big names. Well, I say big names, the established clubs to drop down. Maybe I think they're in real trouble. When I look at that squad, and you look at the amount of players they've let go. Not a lot of firepower. I do think Eric Maxim Choupo-Moting might actually be quite a good signing, but he's not a 15-goal a season striker, and they really don't have one. So I think Stoke are under a little bit of pressure this season, but we shall see.
They have the hallmarks of an Aston Villa or a Wigan 3 years before they went down. To me,
absolutely, yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. They're just sleepwalking almost to sort of lower down the league. But,
their activity this window in general has been quite poor. I'm not sure if you look at someone like West Brom as well. I'm sure we're going to speak about in a moment. Haven't spent a lot of money at all this window. Whether that's because the TV deal has just made the market so screwed, basically. For these clubs, that they're just looking at it and going, everybody is so overpriced, we can't afford to gamble, so we're going to have to consider the squad we've got and promote from within.
And the signings Hughes has made, I think in the main, have not worked out overall. One of the biggest ones, of course, Gianni Mbula, looks set to go to Monaco in the next 10 days. So that's another failed big name signing that just hasn't worked out. And I can't see someone like Shaqiri sticking out there too much longer either. But we shall see.
The fact the Arnautovic money hasn't appeared to have been used yet, and that was quite a hefty fee that they got for him. To only be replaced by Choupo-Moting, assuming that's who his replacement is, doesn't say a lot for their ability
business
to.
sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, great. And yes, Arnautovic's comments upon leaving Stoke when he said he was leaving for a bigger club, I think said quite a lot of things. It's quite a messy departure, that one. But speaking of messy, Josh, you segued it quite nicely. That brings us just quickly to West Brom. Don't want to spend too much time on this game because, frankly, not a lot happened. But a winning goal from a debutant in this game, the Egyptian international Ahmed Hegazi, with a who'd have thought it, a set piece winner for West Brom against Bournemouth, who were Jermaine Defolis for long periods as he was coming back to fitness. Just your thoughts really on West Brom, their business. Tony Pulis cuts a frustrated figure, and also just a word for Eddie Howe and Bournemouth. Any concerns over either of these two moving forwards in the season?
Yeah, I think West Brom, Tony Pulis would be fairly happy after the game. As you say, so a goal from a centre back from a set piece, where they also get a clean sheet. That is the Tony Pulis, hallmark. So I think overall West Brom are going to have a tidy season. I can't see them replicating the kind of finish we saw from them last season. I have to say, Jay Rodriguez looked incredibly promising in the game. I just think he couldn't, stick away that goal. I think as soon as he does, he's going to be getting, or at least involved in 15 goals or so, goals and assists for West Brom next season. I think just looking at Bournemouth on the other side, this is one of the first windows where I think I've looked at the signings they've made and think, right, they've made some very good signings here. I'm still a little bit concerned about the central midfield partnership of Arter and Andy Sermon. I still don't think it's good enough for this level. Once Jermaine Defoe gets his fitness back up, I think he'll help push them through the league. They've got a good, experienced goalkeeper in Begovic, and obviously Nathan Ake coming back on a permanent. Were all very good deals to come in, but I still think they need a properly decent central midfielder. I don't know if Eddie Howe is just not sure what he needs in that position, because to stick with two players that have taken them through the leagues, I'm not sure if they're the ones that really are the ones to push them further up the table, and we could see them struggling if that area isn't addressed.
Yeah, as Ross just pointed out to me as well, 70% of the ball in that game, but not a lot to do, or in the first half, but not a lot sort of end product. So I think getting Jermaine Defoe fit is going to be the key for Bournemouth this season. Speaking of putting the ball in the net, Ross, brings us nicely to Saints Corner. Another 0-0 for you. You made your feelings pretty clear at the end of the season that you were looking for change. You've got change in Pellegrino coming in as the new manager of Southampton. I thought he spoke very well over the summer. I think he said the right things. I think tactically it sort of set up a little bit better. Generally, the feeling was quite upbeat from what I can gather in St Mary's sort of surrounding area. Was it a bit of an anticlimax yesterday, given sort of a 0-0 draw with Swansea? How much of it did you sort of see? And because you were following the game, I think, online, weren't you? So does it feel a little bit like an anticlimax? Do you still think you need to do a lot of business between now and the end of the window? And obviously sorting out Van Dijk's future is kind of key behind that.
Van Dijk's future is sorted. Let's address this now. Van Dijk isn't going. The only way he's going is if we get £75 million for him, and that's it. We've made it very clear to him and to every club that's put in a bid for him, he's not for sale. He was told outright when we made him captain in January and we gave him a new 6-year contract. If you sign this, if you take the captaincy, you are not going in the summer, and that's just it. There's no way around it. If you sign this and you take the captaincy, you're staying for at least one more season. He agreed, and that's it. There's nothing else that can happen. I know he's gone public with it, but that's not changed the club's stance, and it hasn't changed the situation. So he's not going, as far as I'm concerned. I'm more than happy to put money on it myself. Unless we get £75 million for him, he's not going. As for Pellegrino and the start of the season, it did feel like here's the new leader, same as the old leader. When we looked at the scoreline, we had 29 shots on goal throughout the game, only 2 on target, but that says both about our strike force and how well Swansea defended. They were probably the only team in the division, aside from West Brom this weekend, that really did put in a proper defensive display. They made so many blocks. They put in so many fantastic challenges. It was very difficult to break them down. And on the opening day, we just couldn't find the finishing touch that we needed. On another day, that ends 4-0. So, like I say, it does feel a bit deja vu. At the same time, it's the 6th game in a row where we haven't scored at home. But the 5 under Puel, we didn't score at home because we didn't try hard enough. We didn't go forward enough. We were too passive and side to side. It was very crab football. It was all across the middle. Whereas Pellegrino really went for it. It was back to the bombastic style that we've known and loved at Southampton since the Liber consortium took us over in 2009. So it's a different feeling. The crowd were with that side for the entire 90 minutes, and even at the end, there was a standing ovation for them. So it is a different feeling. It is a new era for us. Puel's style was a problem, and it's been addressed. Okay, this weekend we've had the same issue of not being able to put the ball in the back of the net, but I personally think that will change as the weeks go by and we get a bit more settled. As for the business, we essentially started this game with the back 4 that we said at the end of last season we couldn't be starting this season with. It was Cedric Bertrand, and then in the middle was Mar Yoshida and Jack Stevens. Now, my understanding is that Jack Stevens is going to be the new partner for Van Dijk when he decides to return to the first team, which I fully expect him to, considering it's a World Cup year. So I expect Meyer to be dropped down to the bench, considering he missed some super easy chances on the weekend. I imagine there'll be fans that are looking at him and saying that he should be the one as well. So, aside from the 2 signings we have made in Lamina, who's going to be partnering Oriol Romeu, and Bednarak, who's going to be replacing the Romanian defender we've got, Florin Gardos. There you go. It's been so long since I've seen him, I've even forgotten his name. He'll probably be replacing Gardos as our backup centre back. So aside from that, we haven't really done any business, and part of me says we didn't need to, because up front we now have Charlie Austin and Gabbiadini and Shane Long, which is pretty good. At the same time, we had the same issue last year where we didn't get the goals that we needed from them. So it's difficult. On paper, we've got a very good squad that's very well-rounded and covers all our weaknesses. But in reality, 1 injury and we're back in the same issue we had last season. So it's difficult to know. Southampton did their business very quietly and very efficiently. £15 million for Lamina in this window sounds like an absolute bargain. It sounds like it's going to be one of the signings of the window when he finally settles in. So, I just have to have faith in the club and the way they operate, and I have no reason to disavow them just yet. So it's frustrating, but full credit to Swansea, who were brilliant on the day. The defensive display was absolutely fantastic, and they fully deserved a point. But as for Southampton, just need to make sure we get the ball in the back of the net next time. It's just, hopefully at least, just one of those days.
Agreed. Some links with a few forwards I've noticed in and around France this week. The name of Alassane Player is not going away, which I think would be exceptional business if you could get him, but I'm not sure whether Nice would be willing to part with their main centre forward. We shall see. Okay, so that's Saints and Swansea covered. And interesting on the Van Dijk thing, that's definitely going to be one that's going to run until the end of the window. And as you say, he needs to get on with it, or somebody needs to stump up the cash. Pure and simple. Let's talk about one of your loves from last season then. It's Huddersfield, of course, Ross. You spoke glowing terms of them last season. They defied all the odds, got up to the Premier League, rocked up to Crystal Palace, smashed Frank de Boer's new charges 3-0. It's easy, this Premier League lark, isn't it?
Apparently it is, yes. When I saw the result, it didn't actually shock me for 2 reasons. A, because I know what kind of football Huddersfield Town play. And B, because I remember Frank de Boer said that he wants Crystal Palace to play at Barcelona. And if you're going to try and play that way against Huddersfield Town, then you are going to get beaten 3-0, especially when you look at them and say, they're the minnows, they're going to come into our league and we're just going to see them relegated again. This was the kind of game Huddersfield Town were right up for. Doesn't shock me to see Steve Mooney get 2 goals on his debut. He looks a very good striker. He had a very good pre-season for them as well. At least impressed the fans that I saw on social media. So it didn't overly shock me to see the result. It's really nice to see them make such a huge impact on their first. It has strengthened a lot of arguments made by some fans that had a managerial change over the summer that they should have gone for Wagner. I think you need to hold off on that just for a minute, because his style is very much like Liverpool's, except it's a bit more responsible at the back. But they do also have the issue that they're not the same quality as Liverpool, so they are going to be susceptible to bigger teams. And I think Crystal Palace essentially were the perfect team for them to face on their debut. So I'm looking forward to see how they do next week. I don't know who they have off the top of my head, but I suspect they will pose a bit more of a quote unquote Premier League challenge than Crystal Palace did this weekend.
Newcastle. Just to throw spanners in the works.
Just to chuck that one in.
Week after then. But no, I think all right, by the end of the month then we'll say. I think there will be
Southampton the week after us. So.
Oh bloody hell! I think there will be bigger challenges for Huddersfield to see how they're going to do in this division this year. But I think Crystal Palace were the perfect club for them to come up against in their debut, considering the style they're trying to implement there as well. So didn't shock me, but I'm absolutely delighted for them. It's a fantastic result. And Aaron Moy, by the way, looked completely comfortable at this level. Came in from the Australian A-League, I should say, into the Championship via Manchester City. They bought him on a permanent this year, I think, for about £10 million, which, like I say, given the window, is an absolute sniff. And I was very close to putting in my fantasy football team and didn't, and I rue that decision because he was absolutely spectacular on the weekend. So hopefully he has a very good season.
Yeah, he's a very, very good, accomplished buy, sort of player you need in the midfield for a team. And I do like that kit as well, that pink and black number. That's a bit tasty. And as you say, I think the Roller de Boer project is going to take time to adjust, in terms of the style. And, de Boer's, it's going to take a little bit of time, naturally. And as you say, I think it's a perfect game almost for Huddersfield to come in at. So well done to Wagner's men. And Steve Mounier, yes, really, really like him. I know we talked about him last season when the talk was that he would be coming across the Premier League, and I think he's going to do really, really well for that side. So well done to him, and well done to Huddersfield. We will, of course, be keeping close tabs on them throughout the season, no doubt. Okay, so we've just got the two other games on the Saturday. Quickly, let's start with Brighton. Obviously, Josh will give you this one. Made their bow at Premier League level. Organised, well set up. Lewis Dunk, oh dear. But other than that, it was one of those games, wasn't it? I think they were on a bit of a hiding to nothing. They had that one little spell, didn't they, second half, where they threatened a little bit. But ultimately, Manchester City and Pep Guardiola's interesting attire got the victory. I thought it was more about how can I put this? City seemed very, very well organised, very structured, and they did what, for me, they didn't do last season, in that they came in, they got the job done, and they went out. So which way do you sort of see this? Are you worried for Brighton? Do you think there's a very long season ahead, or do you put this down to Man City with a better side and we're expected to win and got the job done?
I think this depends on if this is the squad that's going to see Brighton through past the end of the transfer window. It has certainly highlighted the need for a striker that I wouldn't necessarily say is proven at this level, but when you look at the likes of, as we've just mentioned, Mounier, who's come in for Huddersfield, a striker that's got attributes to succeed. They were after Tammy Abraham, who went to Swansea on loan, but I think there is still a gap in the market there, or a gap in the squad, certainly, for an extra striker, because it doesn't at the moment look like Hamed or Murray will be getting goals at this level, or enough goals anyway, to stay up. We have, on positive sides from the game, the new signing, Jose, off the top of my head, can't think of his surname, a Colombian winger, just signed from the Belgian league.
Yes.
He's just passed his medical.
Him.
Yeah, that guy. I'm trying to frantically look it up.
Yeah, me too. When I hear his name, I'll know it. But
yes, but he has passed his medical, because they weirdly announced the deal was done before the game, but actually none of the paperwork had been done. It's just one of those agreed a fee and agreed wages.
Jose Escudero. That's
the one. Yes. Rolls off the tongue.
Indeed. Unless you're Danny, of course.
Absolutely. But it was absolutely. You shouldn't judge Brighton on this game. It's not a game that really we were going to see anything from to make any real judgment about how well they're going to play the game. The atmosphere was absolutely electric at that game. I think I said at the time, if anybody wanted to know or still thought you cannot make an atmosphere in a modern stadium, just turn that game over, because it was absolutely electric. But yeah, there's still some good things to come out from it. I think Sutner, the new left back, looked decent. Anthony Knockaert got some minutes on the pitch after coming back from injury. And yeah, I think overall, Proper, the PSV midfielder they've signed, looked a little bit shaky on his debut. Pascal Gross looked absolutely amazing, as he has all pre-season. That was Proper's first real chance with really the team. He'd only come in last week. But overall, I think this is going to be one of those seasons where Brighton are quite happy just to enjoy the ride, really. One of the key kind of stats out of that game was the global TV audience for that game against Man City was larger than the combined live audiences throughout the history of Brighton and Hove. So that tells you how big this is for the club and for the city, that I think everyone's just going to enjoy it, really. And I can't see that going through the season. I think Houghton will stay in charge throughout the season, like Burnley did with Sean Dyche. And I just expect them, hopefully, if the crowd can stay behind them, that they can finish at least 17th.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I think they've got enough to be there. We will, of course, make it a complete embarrassment of ourselves by predicting our top 3 or 4 and, of course, our bottom 3 or 4 when we wrap up the show today. So stay tuned for that. Man City also very much winning in the kit stakes. Big fan of that burgundy-ish number, or purple, whatever it is. That was rather nice. And don't worry, listeners, I will save my Guardiola bashing for later on in the season. We're very fair on this podcast. We will give everyone their due chance to impress. And I did think City were impressive for long spells of that game. So, yeah, it does seem like Pep, with sort of unlimited resources, it has to be said. But it seems like he has got a bit of a tune out of them. And they did look a bit more strong defensively yesterday. So we shall see how that goes. So that was the Saturday games, except one, of course. Ross, if I said to you that Burnley would go to Stamford Bridge and win, you'd probably laugh at me. If I said to you that Burnley would go to Stamford Bridge and win fairly comfortably and almost deservedly, I think you would think I was in some kind of asylum. But that's exactly what they did. Now, we have to caveat this and say Gary Cahill's ridiculous sending off. And when I say ridiculous, I mean his decision he made was ridiculous. But, I mean, Burnley were really good, weren't they? And they took full advantage. And they were 3-0 up at one point before Morata and David Luiz got goals back. But Burnley, I mean, didn't win away all season last season. First game of the season, they go to the Champions, win 3-2. Where do you even begin?
You don't. You look at the scoreline, you say, fair enough. You close your window and you go back to what you were doing, because it's just silly. It's silly from the second you read it, it's silly. And then you open up the tab and you see that there were 2 red cards in it and they were thrown up by half time. You just go, I don't know what happened. So, bizarre game. I've been saying for months now that Burnley cannot play this season away from home like they did last. And I was fully expecting them to play that way this weekend because it's away at Chelsea. But they go 15 minutes, there's a red card, and suddenly they decide that they smell blood in the water. And they were absolutely fantastic and blew them away in the first half, really. So I think it's a great sign, because it was quite ironic that we were talking this week in our group chat about Andre Gray moving to Watford for, what was it, £800,000 million, whatever he moved for.
18 million quid, wasn't it? I think. Yeah.
Silly money, really is silly money for a striker that barely even kicked the ball last year. Bizarre. Anyway, we were talking about Burnley and how they could actually be in a spot bother this year, because without Andre Gray, we didn't realise who was going to be there to score the goals, because they haven't got an out-and-out striker without Andre Gray. And we were saying that they could be involved in a relegation scrap here, especially considering the style they play and the way they're going to get absolutely blown away by teams that spent all this money. And they go to Chelsea and they win 3-2. So it's just a bizarre result from top to bottom. And I think you have to say, although Burnley deserve all the credit in the world for actually winning it, I think it does also speak to the damage that Chelsea have done to themselves over the course of the window, not only because they haven't bought many people in, but also because they've sold so many or loaned so many. It's one of the few times where their loan policy has been so over the top that it's actually damaged the first team. Nathan Ake, who would have been the absolutely fantastic person to bring into that game. I know Rudiger is in there now, but Ake's got the Premier League experience. It wouldn't have been such a daunting thing to have thrown him in. Kurt Zuma's been sent out on loan to Stoke, another player you could have brought into that kind of situation. Diego Costa is apparently now wants out. I know Aiden Hazard's injured, but you've got Ruben Loftus-Cheek who could have slotted in somewhere. He's out on loan. Lewis Baker has gone out on loan. They've just done such bizarre business this window, and they haven't covered themselves at all. And when they ran into a spot of bother against Burnley, they had to rely on the team they had out on the field, except for perhaps Morata, who was one of the new signings. And it just didn't work, and they couldn't find their way back in. Now you have to caveat that with the 2 red cards, of course you do, but at the same time, the underlining point still stands that the business they've done seems to have completely handicapped them, especially in this game where there was just faces and bodies they could have brought on, but they were so happy to send them out on loan that they weren't available for them. So bizarre from top to bottom, and I think it says a lot about outside influences on Chelsea. But for Burnley, I mean, none of that should matter. What an incredible win that is. Chelsea very rarely lose at home, much less to a club that most people will be looking at as relegation candidates this year. So full credit to them. It's one of the, if not the story from the weekend. Just absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, and full credit should go to Burnley, as I say. Yes, they took advantage of what turned out to be 2 red cards in the end, with Fabregas also sent off late on, but they thoroughly deserve that performance and that victory. So well done to Sean Dyche's men. From the other side of the fence, though, Josh, just quickly on Chelsea. Things are not well there, are they? Things are not well. Conte used the Charity Shield interviews to sort of get his grievances out. There's a lot of talk that he wants more players. The board may not be backing him. They've sold Nemanja Matic when it didn't seem that they needed to. As Ross touched on there, they've got rid of a lot of players on loan again. It's not all well there, is it? It's something's not quite, doesn't seem like it's right. And we've been here before, so what has to change to get Conte sort of back into the happy Conte? Because he doesn't seem like a happy chap.
Yeah, I think the whole club is kind of getting distracted by what's happening with Conte off the field for the transfers that he wants. And he seems to have taken his eye off the ball. Looking at the goals they conceded against Burnley, they're all very simple, more or less from set pieces. The first and second goal, I believe, off the top of my head, the Ward goal and the second Vokes goal were basically the mirror image of 2 set pieces, where it was Burnley setting up to launch a long ball into the box and playing a cheeky short one, running down the byline, whipping a ball in and getting the goal that way. And it's amazing to see a team, especially when we were last season, I think, and I've heard across a couple of other pods how great Italian managers are in terms of building defences. And it just seemed like they'd gone mad, gone walkies. They did have Christensen, who was on loan, remember last year at Mönchengladbach. He's come back into the squad, but as Conte's opposite number said after the Charity Shield, that perhaps if you're moaning about squad size, you should perhaps look at the players that, as Ross has alluded to, have gone out on loan, and perhaps use those to not make up the numbers, because there's, as we've listed, some very, very good players in that list, and especially as Chelsea are continuing to dominate the youth Premier League ranks, that they should have players there that they can bring through. Just thinking, Bertrand Traore was sold to, was it not Lyon?
Yes, it was. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, you're absolutely right. Yep.
He's gone to Lyon. There's a perfectly good forward outlet there. I remember Ancelotti at his time said he was one of the most promising players coming out of their youth academy, and they're very happy to let him. They're very happy to sell him, especially when you have the likes of Pedro was injured. You've got Hazard that's out for 3 months. Willian is the only winger they've got at the moment, and you've managed to let someone go who could easily have gone into that position and done a job for them as a squad player. But Chelsea are just going about their business in a very odd way, and they could come out as one of the biggest losers of the transfer window.
Yeah, agreed. And the Diego Costa thing baffles me. Don't get me wrong, I'm actually with Conte in regards that if you've got a bad egg, and from what I can gather, Costa was a bad egg at times and was, questioned the manager's decisions a lot last season. I'm all for getting rid of players when that happens. I think you can't have a player questioning the authority of a manager, particularly if it's over a season. but don't bomb him out before you know you've tied up the replacement. And it seems like they were convinced they were getting Lukaku. They didn't get him, and now they're stuck with a striker who clearly isn't going to play for them again. And equally, they're having trouble selling, and now kind of need Jeremy Boga, who is a very talented young player who played for Rennes last season in Ligue 1. A very talented young boy, but he started yesterday, and it was really thrown in at the deep end. And as you say, Christensen came on as well. All of a sudden, Chelsea look a bit threadbare, and all this talk about Bakayoko and Kante, I don't think that's going to work, but we shall see. But nevertheless, down to earth with a bump for Conte's Chelsea. And similar could be said of the Sunday games. Ross, today we saw Newcastle lose at home by 2-0 to Spurs. Dele Alli back on the scoring train yet again, with the opening goal, which probably killed the game as a contest. I thought once they went 1-0 up, that it was kind of game over. Tied up late on by Ben Davies. Good performance from Spurs, thorough, very very disciplined. They gave debut to Kyle Walker. What's he called? Kyle
Peters,
Walker.
I think.
That's it. Walker Peters. How bizarre is that? He's got the same name. He looks impressive. I think he was given man of the match by Sky. Not too much to worry about. But Ross, we're going to have to talk John Joe again, aren't we? What on earth goes through this guy's mind? I don't know if you've seen the sending off. Absolutely crazy. Have you seen it?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
I mean, what as a manager, if you're Rafael Benitez, what are you saying? Because Benitez's reaction to me suggested like he was shocked that John Joe Shelby had been sent off. And for those who haven't seen it, it's a blatant stamp on Dele Alli. And whilst I have to put my biases aside on certain incidents like that on Dele Alli, it was a ridiculous and very dangerous stamp on the back of the ankle, which he could easily have avoided. And if you're Rafa Benitez and you see that tonight, I mean, what are you saying to John Joe Shelby? Because that basically is costing the game, isn't it?
It has, and anything you say to him is not anything that he hasn't heard before. It's just part of Shelby's game. He has this impetuous streak that you see come through every now and again. He did a couple of times to the Championship. I don't remember him being sent off for any of the major issues, but I certainly remember spikes last season where there was incidents where Shelby was in the middle of them. It's just part of his nature. It's part of his character, and he will. As funny as the sort of joke is I'm about to make, because he looks a bit like Voldemort. He is relatively good at the dark arts. He can do those kinds of things, and he can get away with them. But it was poor. It really was poor this weekend, and it was blatant. I mean, one of the issues he's going to be facing, especially for bringing in video assistant referees, is that everything that he does is going to get caught on camera, and that one was just such a blatant stamp. Thankfully, the referee did manage to see it, but I don't know. I don't know how you stamp that out. Oh, that's another stupid joke. I don't know how you get rid of that in someone's game. It's just part of who he is. Balotelli, he's been told a million times by managers far better than Rafa Benitez, you need to stop this, you need to cut this out. And what does he do? He goes out the next week and does the exact same thing. It's just part of who he is, and I'm not sure you're ever going to get rid of it in him. So it's just one of those things. Unfortunately, it's good that it was caught. It's good that he's been sent off for it. Hopefully, he can learn from it, but I certainly don't expect him to.
And I'll be honest with you. I know this is sacrilege to say such. I don't actually think he's that good, Shelby. I've never really bought the hype personally, but that's just my own personal opinion. No goal for Harry Kane. Hit the post and had one brilliantly saved by Rob Elliott. Has yet to score in August, I'm reliably informed. I'm sure that will change, possibly this year. But nevertheless, good victory for Spurs. I think everyone is basically sat here now watching and waiting for Spurs to play a home game. I think that's where we're going to really see what they're all about with the Wembley factor, as it's now going to be dubbed, I think. So we shall see what happens with Spurs long term. But yeah, credit where due, Pochettino, whilst not spending a lot of money. Just very, very quickly, Josh, because I want to move on to Man United. But Danny Rose's comments, do you get the impression that could be the last we see of Danny Rose? Do you think Pochettino will come down hard, or is he what he said in the press? Is that how he really feels? Maybe Ross would know more as well. But do you think that's Poch just keeping it quiet, or do you think underneath he's secretly pretty cheesed off about that revelation in the paper last week?
Yeah, I think we've seen this before, where a stadium move and a left back has moaned about their contract situation and how much they're getting paid. I'm sure we can relate.
I don't know what you mean.
Absolutely. There is quite interesting from the other side of North London to see how this is going down at Spurs, because the fact that we say they got an absolutely wonderful amount of money for Kyle Walker has really, shot themselves in the foot, because now all other clubs are looking at that transfer and saying, well, okay, if you want any of our wing backs that we think are better than Kyle Walker, you're going to have to pay more than that. I think even Man City got hit by that, the fact that they had to pay an extra 3 million or so for Benjamin Mendy, because they were like, well, he's better than Kyle Walker, which I think from what we saw last season, it's very close. I think they're both very good fullbacks, which is why they've gone to one of the bigger clubs in England. But overall, I think Pochettino's probably spoken to Danny Rose and said, look, you're in the Premier League, you want to go back up north, but you're going to one of our rivals. We're not going to sell you to one of our rivals. And if you want more money, you're probably not going to get it outside the Premier League. And if you are, it's to the top 3 clubs in the world. It's your PSGs, your Barcelonas and your Real Madrids. And they're not knocking on the door for you. So, shut up, get back on the field. And if one of those 3 clubs comes into for you, then maybe we'll think about it. But I think at the moment he's probably just very frustrated. He's been out injured a while, and I think he's just got a bit stir crazy.
Badly advised as well, I think. Footballers, I know this is going to come as a shock to all of our listeners listening to this now, but footballers aren't always the brightest. I know, it's a surprise to all, but poorly advised, I think, was young Mr. Rose. Right, we'll finish our Premier League roundup then with Manchester United. Josh, I'll stick with you for a minute and I'll come to Ross in a second on this game. A 4-0 demolition job of West Ham. Straightforward question, really. Was this how good Manchester United were, or was it more of West Ham really didn't offer anything and were almost just waiting to be beaten? Which of the two? Was it maybe a bit of both? What did you sort of make of it today?
Yeah, without getting a fence post too far up my backside, it is a bit of both. From what I saw in the game, I don't understand why Chelsea let Matic go, because the guy is just there, perfectly breaking up the play, distributing well, and helping to unleash Pogba. He is a player that I think perfectly complements him, so they can get the best out of that £89 million price tag that they paid for him. Lukaku doing what he does best, scoring goals against the smaller teams in the league, something that Man United really did struggle with last season. It's good to see Martial get a goal as well, but West Ham, I think we've looked at generally and gone, what's happening here? What are they trying to do? Because this is not a good result for them, and I think Slaven Bilic is going to have to look behind his shoulder, very early on this season, and I think is probably a prime target, although this is quite early to discuss it, for first manager out the door.
I think there was a very good reason that after that game, West Ham were the number 1 trend in the UK rather than Man United, because people looked at West Ham's business this summer and then saw that result and went, how on earth did you get beaten so badly by a Man United team who have improved, don't get me wrong, but we still remember as the Man United team from last season that were dragging out 1-0 wins in these kinds of fixtures. It reflects quite poorly on them, although in a month's time it might be fine. It might be quite tame given how Man United may end up starting, but immediately that's a very dangerous result for West Ham given the business they've done.
Yeah, I agree. I must confess, I was quite impressed with Manchester United at times. I'm not one of these people that buys them. I've seen so many journalists on so many different mediums, podcasts, blogs, newspaper articles, the lot, all saying Manchester United are favourites for this title. I don't see it. I really don't. I wasn't convinced Matic would be a success. I might have to change my view on that because he has looked pretty good since he's come in. But for me, I still think they're just all about physicality. It almost is Chelsea United that Mourinho's putting in place. The one thing I would say is today they were quite expansive and free-flowing at times, but I think that was more about how much space West Ham and in particular Arthur Masuaku was affording them, particularly in the first half. But yeah, I do think Manchester United still have business to do. I still expect to see 2 more come in, and possibly a couple go out. I just hope Anthony Martial doesn't sort of end his career in a whimper at United, because it was good to see him come on and get the goal. And for all his critics, and I'll never really buy into brand Pogba. I thought he was quite impressive today in that, as you say, in that role alongside Matic. So we shall see. But yeah, credit where due. United dispatched West Ham with relative ease, and were clinical. And don't worry, listeners. I'm well aware that my good friend Lukaku got 2 goals. I still don't rate him anywhere near as many do. So I shall reserve my judgment until he's played a few games further down the line. But we shall see how that goes. Good start for Manchester United, nevertheless. We're not going to give you a table because, frankly, it'll be pointless. There's 1 game played. Really, we won't be giving you a table for at least a month. It's just silly. So that was the weekend that was in the Premier League. We're now going to transition into a bit of EFL, a little bit of a sort of a truncated version this week because we had a lot of Premier League to get through on the opening weekend. But Josh, I'm going to hand over to you because Ross has been quite tied up this week with a lot of various bits and bobs. So if you want to sort of take the reins, give us a little bit of what's gone on in the Championship, and then any other stories that you've picked out from Leagues 1 and 2, and I will let you and Ross have a little natter about that.
Yes, thanks, Kris. We'll start with the Saturday action. I think the key results we saw out of this, absolutely crazy game up at Brentford, with Nottingham Forest coming away 4-3 winners there. I think that's probably the key result that we saw. Nottingham Forest, I think we've looked at what they've done across the window, brought in a couple of nice players, and overall done very, very well. Biggest shock, I think, of the weekend came at Cardiff, winning 3-0 at Aston Villa. John Terry has certainly hit the Championship with a bang. I don't think he'll really have thought it would have been this difficult, but 2 goals from Mendes Lang from Cardiff and 1 from Junior Hoylett got them the points. I think Steve Bruce will be very worried about what's going on there at the moment because, yeah, as he says in an interview, he was on the edge of embarrassment. It was not a good result for them at all, especially when it's expected that they should be doing very well in the league, pushing probably for the title. After everything that we've seen from Hull City, they managed to get a 4-1 win against Burton. I think the big thing about this was actually Burton's Jackson Irvine scoring in the 33rd minute and then managing to get sent off in the 38th for 2 yellow cards. Hernandez getting a hat-trick in that game and Grosky getting the 4th for them. I think what else dropped in there? We had the big game at the end of the weekend with Middlesbrough and Sheffield United. A 1-0 win for Borough. That game, I think, initially we would have said would have had goals in it, but just a single one from Rudy Gestedt, probably the man we'd at least expected to have got the goal in that game. But with all the strike power, I think Middlesbrough will look to beat teams by a larger winning margin. Lewis Baker coming in looks to be a very, very good acquisition. And just one other result I'll pull out from Sunday would be Sunderland's win against Norwich City. A 3-1 win for Sunderland. I think they're looking to prove us all wrong by saying that this season they might be looking for just consolidation. Lewis Graben managing to get 2 goals in the right end and 1 goal in the wrong against his former club. McGeady getting the other goal. Dropping into before we could drop into League One, Ross, anything from the Championship that you want to quickly go through?
The only one I would have thrown in myself is Derby versus Wolverhampton Wanderers, which was quite a big acid test of both sides. I think we might have picked it out last weekend as well. And Wolves coming out 2-0 winners away from home, which I thought was not a surprise, but I was certainly surprised to see Derby, or at least in this game, given the bombastic counter-attacking style that Gary Rowett implements there at Derby. Surprised to see them not get on the score sheet, but for Wolverhampton Wanderers, for all the ifs, buts and maybes about their business and will they do well, have they overdone it, etc., very solid start so far, and they look like one of the most dangerous sides in the Championship so far.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we mentioned it last week that Wolves look to have one of the most devastating attacks in the league. Hopefully they can keep it short at the back and help progress up that league and challenge for the title. Dropping into Leagues 1 and 2 now. Big hitters across the weekend. I think Rotherham United, who flattered to deceive last weekend, coming out with a 5-0 win against Southend United. It's one way to re-announce yourself back in League One. We've also got Blackburn Rovers losing, I believe, again against Doncaster Rovers. That's Marquez, Coppinger penalty, and May with the goals for Donny, and Samuel getting the consolation goal for Blackburn, which was just a crazy result when you see it, seeing as Doncaster came up into the division and Blackburn came down, that you'd see a result that way. So very worrying scenes for Blackburn. I think other results from the weekend we should have a look at. Oxford United run out 3-0 winners against Portsmouth. Again, the loss of the manager to Michael Appleton, to Leicester as assistant coach doesn't seem to have fazed them. The job they're doing there looks to be a really good one, initially anyway. And I should quickly go to Sunday fixture. We had Wigan Athletic played Bury, where they came out with a 4-1 win there. Any other talking points from you, Ross, in League One?
The two I looked at immediately were Oxford beating Pompey, as you said. That's a huge result. I mean, Oxford are one of the most interesting stories in the league this year for me. I've also just noticed Plymouth beat Charlton Athletic 2-0. That's a massive result, especially for Charlton, because they're expected to be, pushing for the top six. But the other one I looked at was Fleetwood Town getting another win over Northampton Town. I have a funny feeling Fleetwood are going to run away with this league this year, so that's a big result for them. I didn't actually know that Rotherham had beaten Southend this weekend, so I was listening to you talk. I didn't realize they'd done it 5-0. I literally sat here and went, no way, under my breath. What an incredible result that is for Rotherham, given the hell they went through last week. So you've gone through the biggest ones, but Rotherham 5, Southampton, dear me. Southend 0 is, that's a stunning. That's probably the result of the entire weekend in all the leagues for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry to cut across there. I heard the 2 Plymouth goals from my back garden. Atmosphere was rocking at Home Park. So I just thought I'd chuck that in, just because I can. Carry on.
If I can take myself off mute, that would certainly help proceedings. So let's drop into League 2 to finally wrap up. Luton Town, we said last week that we didn't expect them scoring 8. It looks like they've run out of goals because they managed to lose 1-0 to Barnet to really bring them back down to earth from last week's 8-2 victory against Yeovil. Yeovil, on the other hand, managed to put that aside from them. They're still conceding goals, but they conceded less than they scored this weekend with a 3-2 victory over Accrington Stanley. Who are they?
Exactly.
Other key results that came out, I think, looking at it, Coventry City getting a win over Grimsby. Looks to be a good result there for Coventry. It's always nice to see them doing well. Cheltenham Town getting a 1-0 victory over Crawley. It's a big one for a local side of mine, Crawley that is. But overall, the main one I would have a look at, New Boys Forest Green Rovers, unfortunately lost 2-0 to Mansfield Town. Ross, were there any other games from this that caught your eye?
The big one, as I look through them now, is Coventry winning 2-0 away at Grimsby Town. I think we've all got a soft spot for Coventry, mainly because of just the hell they went through in League One, and I did kind of fear for them dropping into League Two. I did kind of wonder if they were going to be in for another long, hard season, if the board hadn't fixed itself, and the ownership issues, the fans had got back on board, that sort of thing. But they seem to have settled in quite quickly to life in League Two, and I hope they have a really good season. So it's nice for me personally to see Coventry getting a relatively comfortable win over a side that I also do like and has now been back in the Football League for an entire season and would have been very big stern test for them. So that to me is one of the results of the weekend. But I think the big ones have to be Luton and Yeovil, given the scale of the result we saw last weekend. To see them both turn their fortunes around so bizarrely, it's it's great for Yeovil to get back on the board, but for Luton Town to have scored 8 last week and then got nothing against Barnet, I mean there should be at least questions asked.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was everything from Leagues 1 and 2. If anybody has any questions on that, then by all means get in touch with the pod and we will endeavour to answer them for you. But I think as we don't have any this week, Kris, it's back to you.
Lovely job, yes. And just to echo that very point, obviously with this season, with the change of format and whatnot, we will be relying on you guys and girls to send us your questions. We can't promise we'll get through all of them because every time we say that, we get an absolute avalanche of people writing into us, and we always feel bad if we can't get to them all. So if you can, send them in. And if you follow a team in the lower league, please do get in touch. We appreciate. We're not the Guardian, we're not the Times. We're only small fry, bless us. But we've got a loyal listenership, and we want to hear from you. So if you are a follower of a lower league team, or just an unfashionable team, quote unquote, then do get in touch and let us know who you follow and the reasons why. I should say as well, we have had a new blog from our good friend, Mr. Jake Bayliss. Thank you, Jake. Your email has been received and it will be live as a blog soon. It's all about James Rodriguez and his move to the Bundesliga. Yes, keep a lookout for that. It's called James Rodriguez, the Final Galactico. So I'll obviously tweet that when it's live. We're planning to get that out this week if we can. So thank you, Jake. We've also had just the one correspondence this week. Well, I say one. 2 correspondents from the same person, Chris H., who's got in touch, who was a regular last season. He said, hope summer finds you well. He said, is Quincy Promise staying in Russia or what? Answer to that, Chris, is I don't know. I doubt it. I know he's been very sought after. I think he's one of those ones that you might see jumping around in the on the final day of the transfer window. Possibly, we shall see. And his other email, which I thought was quite interesting, says Barcelona, Liverpool, Dortmund, Ajax, all sitting around a boardroom table. The plan to divvy up the Neymar money is players and cash to varying levels, so everyone is benefiting. Barcelona buy Coutinho, Liverpool use a massive amount of the money to buy Aubameyang, Dortmund in turn fill up the portion of money to get Kasper Dolberg. Ajax can just collect the cash for Dolberg and perhaps negotiate a deal for 2 or 3 loan players. Interesting that. I like the way he thinks. Dominoes. I think European-wise, obviously we've only got Liga underway at the moment. Indeed, a certain Mr. Neymar is indeed in the rather odd yellow strip of PSG. I quite like it, but it's very strange to see PSG in yellow. Currently in action away at Gangomp, amidst all the sort of front page headlines and all the razzmatazz. Before we wrap up the show, boys and girls, I should just ask my pundits what they think of this. Both of you guys, what did you make of the whole transfer, the Neymar saga? Ross, I'll start with you. What did you make of this whole thing? Is it just money gone mad? Do you believe Neymar when he says he wants to make PSG a project to the next level? Do you think it's all about money? Is it about the Ballon d'Or? And what does it do for Liga? Because we've all heard the jibes, we've all heard the sort of idea that it's the lesser league in Europe and players only leave it, they don't join it. So what sort of move do you think this becomes for the French league and for Neymar as a talent, if you will?
I don't think personally that money was as big a factor as some people are suggesting, because when you go from Barcelona to anywhere, I think you kind of have made your money. I think he would have been on more than enough. I don't think any money that PSG are paying him would have been so enticing to the point where it would have been, oh, I have to go here. I think Neymar is the kind of guy that would already be set for 4 lifetimes, let alone just the one. So I'm personally not of the belief that money was the major factor here. I think that he was personally tired of being under Messi's shadow. And I could understand that as a professional footballer, that you, with that much talent, and when you've got the world at your feet like Neymar does, I can understand why it would be enticing to go and take on another project if someone can come in and afford you. There are other players that have played with Messi that didn't have that because the money just wasn't around and there wasn't a club that could come in and make that kind of offer for them. I think with PSG, they do have this bottomless pit of money and they seem to have all the tricks of the trade and how to get around financial fair play, it sounds like most of this move has been financed by a World Cup sponsor from Neymar or for Neymar, which is then filtered through and has been able to see him break his own contract. It's bizarre how it's all gone down. If that's the way it has actually happened, then I don't see this as a particular transfer, unless PSG have stumped up all the money for themselves. Then I personally would then recognise it as a transfer, and then I would say it's an absolutely horrendous amount of money. And it was the moment this summer where I sat back and went, man, I can't understand why people don't like football. It was just such a silly amount of money. At the same time, it's just the way the game's going. It's the modern way. It is endemic of how poorly structured financial fair play is for me. I think if that had been more strict, then perhaps this wouldn't have happened. But it is what it is. I think if you strip away the financial side of it and the ethical side of it as a move, it's bloody fascinating to see a massive player like Neymar leave the biggest league in the world to then go to Ligue 1, which is still recognised as, like you say, the fifth best, and even in Europe. So I think it's a fascinating move just in terms of the sport, but the ethics and the financial side of it. I mean, I can completely understand now why people aren't keen on football. It's a sickening amount of money to see thrown about, in my opinion. So I didn't like it from those angles, but from purely a sporting perspective, purely on the field, it's absolutely fascinating, and I can't wait to see how it all develops.
Yeah, me too. And Josh, what do you reckon? I mean, are you excited by it? Because there is news breaking. We're recording this for 8 o'clock in the evening on Sunday, the 13th of August. Breaking news tonight is that Monaco, who went to Dijon and won 4-1 earlier on this afternoon, you might have noticed a certain young Kylian Mbappe was dropped to the bench by Leonardo Jardim, who said he felt the player was not focused mentally and was affected by transfer speculation. The news tonight is that Paris Saint-Germain have Monaco have informed their playing staff that Mbappe will be joining Paris Saint-Germain next week. That will break the Neymar valuation again, surely. So what do you make of what PSG are doing and the whole saga of this Neymar transfer and potentially Mbappe as well?
Yeah, I think with the Neymar one, when I saw it come out, there wasn't. I wouldn't say I was surprised that he was leaving. Obviously, the figure that came out for what he was worth obviously is enough to take anybody's breath away. But looking at players that he wants to emulate, the likes of the Brazilian Ronaldo, he's made some bigger moves in his time as well. When he was about, just looking back at when he left Barcelona to join Inter, then went back to Real Madrid and then to AC Milan. I think they've got, looking at a player like that, Ronaldo, that he went and tested himself in various different leagues, and I think Neymar is very conscious of the fact that if he is going to be seen as a top player in Brazil, like rightly he should be, he's going to need to step away from Messi, because there's always going to be that doubt that yes, Barcelona were incredibly successful under the time of Neymar, but was Neymar the real catalyst for that success? And I think whilst he's always there with Lionel Messi, that's never going to be the case, and he is good enough to build his own legacy, and at PSG I think he's able to do that, and especially with the foundations they've got. We've seen that they've got Dani Alves in there. There's a lot of that Brazil side that play in France, or in Paris I should add. Most of that back line I think now is Brazilian. If you correct me if I'm wrong, Kris, but I believe that is more or less the first choice Brazil back four.
Marquinhos, Thiago Silva and
Dani Alves.
Dani Alves, yes. There's only Ivan Kurzawa playing left back at the moment that's out of sync. If only they'd have kept Maxwell, they could have had all Brazilian. It would have been lovely. But no, you're right.
Absolutely. And then when you add the mix of Kylian Mbappe into that squad, you just have a look and say, well, someone's got to be going out of that. I don't know what that means for someone like Julian Draxler or Angel Di Maria, who will just be looking and thinking, well, where do I fit in here? Especially if you're a Julian Draxler.
Well, I can tell you, Draxler is the one they would like to keep, but where they're going to play him, I don't know. Gonzalo Guedes is likely to go out on loan, which is a crying shame because he's a former Hipster choice and one of my favourite young players in Europe coming through. I thought he was going to be a real star. Looks like he'll go on loan, potentially to Huddersfield. I was reading, which is quite bizarre. But Hatem Ben Arfa will go. Gregor Kashgariak will go. Serge Aurier will go. Who are the others? Lucas Moura is another one likely to be sacrificed, even though he is very close friends with Neymar. PSG have got a lot of work to do. Blaise Matuidi is another high earner that they want to get out the door. It's going to be very, very busy coming the run up to the transfer deadline, which is only 15 or so days to go. There's going to be a lot of change at PSG, and I really think if you've got a spare tenner and you fancy being brave, I think if you were going to put any money on PSG winning the Champions League, maybe this is the year to do it. But we shall see. We shall see. It's been crazy this summer. It really has. And as we say, we haven't forgotten, and we won't be sort of dismissing our European coverage. We will be keeping you across that. Of course, Joel, who's currently in Spain for the Clásico, the Super Cup final, he's out there. As the time of recording this, Joel will be back. He's still very much part of the team. We've got James Truscott, who will be back as well. James is going to do a bit of English and a bit of German for us. Obviously, I'll cover Ligue 1. We've got loads of guests lined up throughout the course of this season as well. So the plan is to do a few monthly specials for our European leagues as well. So you won't miss out. And as we said before, if you have got a question that is European based or one of the leagues in Europe that you want us to get answered for you, chuck it in the question box and we will do our very best to get that answered. Just quickly before we wrap up, as we said, Ligue 1 is the only league underway as far as the European leagues that we cover go. Of course, Holland or the Netherlands is underway. I think Belgium is underway as well. But of the major 5 leagues, this one, Ligue 1 in France, is the one that's underway. And this weekend's results, you had Nice surprisingly falling at home to Troyes. Can't help but think that their mind's on that Champions League qualifier. But a really big result that for Troyes on Friday night. Olympique Lyonnais, whom I just purchased a shirt of, by the way. Lot of money that, but worth it. They got a 2-1 win over Rennes away from home. Another goal for Mariano Diaz there. He seems to be a player who I think we're going to see quite a lot of good things from this season. Marseille got a very late winner, Lucas Ocampos, who's returned there with a late winner over Claudio Ranieri's Nantes. Angers with a 2-0 win over Amiens. Crivelli and Mangani there. Bordeaux beat Metz 2-0. Varda and Sankara with the goals there. St Etienne, great start to their season. 2 wins out of 2 for Oscar Garcia, who of course you'll know well, Josh, from his Brighton days. Roman Hamouma with the winning goal there against Caen. Toulouse beat Montpellier by a goal to 0. Good result that for them. Dumas with the penalty. Strasbourg, rather surprisingly, beating Marcelo Bielsa's Lille by 3 goals to 0. A game that saw Bielsa lose 2 goalkeepers in one game. Bizarre. And of course, we mentioned Dijon didn't cut the mustard. That's just for you, John, if you're listening. They lost at home to Monaco by 4 goals to 0. A hat-trick for Radamel Falcao and a bicycle kick from Jemison. Also, if you get a chance, have a look at Saïd's goal in that game for Dijon. Absolutely magical first touch, but in a losing format. And as we said, at time of recording, Guingamp are currently playing PSG, and the score is 0-0 as we record this pod. Right, okay. I'm going to ask you this at the end of every podcast, gentlemen. So here goes. Any other business? Josh, I think you've got some dates of when the leagues, Serie A, La Liga, Bundesliga, when they return. So do you want to let listeners know when to expect some updates on those? Yeah,
so our other big 3 leagues that we cover, Serie A kicks off, it's the last one to kick off on Saturday the 19th. It's the first round of fixtures for them, and La Liga and Bundesliga are both back on the Friday night, the 18th. So expect updates on the following Monday from us.
Yes, absolutely. As I say, we will do our very best. We're sort of trying to cover 2 people missing. But yeah, we'll do our best. I'm sure between us all as a team, we'll come up with the goods. We're also planning an MLS podcast soon for all you American listeners as well, because that's getting to a crunch stage. So we'll have Pat and Jimmy back on for another MLS update as well. Any other business from you, Ross? Anything you want to mention to our listeners, or any fixtures you want to look out for next week, whether it be EFL or otherwise?
The only thing I can think of is that the Carabao Cup is a terrible name for the League Cup.
Oh, isn't it just? It just doesn't work, does it?
No, it's
Carabao
absolutely horrendous. Horrendous? I've even made up
Horrendous.
a word. I'm
That's
so angry by it. I've made
brilliant.
up a word.
That is superb. Horrendous will now be the official name of the official word of made up word of the podcast moving forwards. The Football Hipsters Horrendous podcast. That's what it should be called. Superb. Okay. One final thing we should mention, of course, at the end of this season, you'll all be aware there is a World Cup coming. And just to give you a lot of early notice, we will be across that World Cup. However, I don't think we'll be doing daily podcasts. So we will probably give you an international splicing or international podcast splice throughout. So you can get the runners and riders of who's qualified and who hasn't, etc. So any of you that are fans of international football, we're breaking the spell. We will actually do a few international pods as well. So there you go. Right. Okay. I think that will do it for this week then. It's been a pleasure to be back in the hot seat. This is the first podcast I have done for, well, a number of months now. I'm a little bit rusty. So thank you very much for sticking with us. Obviously, we've done a slightly longer show tonight, and the idea moving forwards is to keep them to around about sort of an hour and a half to 2 hours maximum. As we say, we'll be with you once a week now instead of twice a week. Please do tweet us at the FH Podcast. Drop us an email, footballhipsterspodcast@gmail.com, if you've got something more lengthy you want to go into, or you can slide into our DMs. I think that's what all the cool kids say these days. So please do give us some feedback. If you like the new format, let us know. If you absolutely hate it, let us know. We'll see what we can do. As always, our listeners are what we do this for. So we will try and work a system for you guys. But we think moving forwards, this is the best way to please everyone. So thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much to Ross. And I hope Reading is treating you well, Ross, by the way. It's the first time I've spoken to you since you've moved up there. So I trust all is well.
Yeah, apart off the internet, which is crackly as all hell at the moment. But yes, otherwise, I'm still alive. So.
Hey, if it was ever going to crackle, now is the time as we wrap up. So good. Well, I hope you're happy up there and doing well. And Josh, I heard the seagulls in the background earlier on, so keep fighting the good fight, and you'll have to make sure when you go to a Brighton game, which I'm sure you will be soon, you'll have to try and get some sound clips or something while you're at these games. So please do.
I will do. If anybody wants sounds of seagulls, I can just get them at the most inappropriate times of probably about 2 a.m. in the morning when I'm just about trying to go to sleep.
Perfect. Absolutely fine. I can do that down here as well. So there you go. The new Seagulls podcast out soon. So there we go then. That wraps us up for this week. It's good to be back, as I say. Thank you very, very much for listening. Again, do check out 4 Elements Design for all your website design, branding and marketing needs. Do check out Kris and the team if you want to build a website, if you want some help and support on a website or anything to do with that kind of thing. Kris is your man. Get in touch with us and we will pass on the contact details. Until next week then, we have been the Football Hipsters. My thanks to Ross and to Josh. Have a good evening, gentlemen.
You too.
Thanks, Reserva.
And we shall return this time next week. Thank you for being with us. Keep your beard strong and your glasses trendy. And here comes another season.